Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition.
It's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. And may God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love.
God love you and God bless you. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. And may God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me bring me a higher love. It's that higher love I've been thinking of.
My brother, my sister, God love you. God bless you. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me sister, God love you and God bless you. My brother, my sister, God love you and God bless you. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love. May God hold us all in those almighty hands of love.
See the face of Christ, see the mercy in his eyes. Every valley shall be lifted high. Now our enemies are blessed, the heavy laden rest, for his judgment is love. His judgment is love. There is no more guilt, there is no more shame. All our darkest sin, all our deepest pain. Blessed are the poor, all alone and broken, lost and torn. See the kingdom comes to us, a war that's fought with love. Our only war is love. Prepare the way of the Lord, wielding mercy like a sword. Every mountain top will be made low. No, he holds the earth like dust, and his judgment comes to us, and his judgment is love. His judgment is love. We will not fight this. We will not fall in line. As if it's us or them, it's us for them, it's us for them. We reject the either. They can't define us anymore. As if it's us or them, it's us for them, it's us for them. We will not fight their wars. We will not fall in line. As if it's us or them, it's us for them, it's us for them. We reject the either or. Can't define us anymore. As if it's us or them, it's us for them, it's us for them. Prepare the way of the Lord, wielding mercy like a sword. Every mountain top will be made low. No, he holds the earth like dust, and his judgment comes to us, and his judgment is love. May our judgment be love.
Hi friends, I have a few things to make sure that you know. First, our community conversation, our next one, is November 10th, and it will be in person. It'll be a potluck, which is absolutely the peak of in-person church gatherings. This one's going to be led by our teacher in residence, Dr. Jennifer Bashal, as well as our community pastor, Dr. Tirza Turner. The topic is white Christian nationalism. Three words that by themselves each have their own impact. They probably all deserve their own discussions, don't they? But joined together, they describe, have a whole different energy. They describe a movement that grows more troubling by the day. So we're going to cover how is that different than patriotism? Why is it growing? Why is it on the rise? Why is it important for us to be able to recognize it? What role can we play in dismantling it? So go to crosspoint.org to find out how to register. You can also get some guidance there on what kind of dish to bring if you want to and can bring a dish. And then what the childcare options are as well. So we hope that you can make it. Speaking of children, parents, our next parenting lab is November 12th. It will be led by Sarah Swartzendruber, who has over a decade of experience shepherding others on the journey to conceiving of the divine more expansively, more mysteriously. And then so how this kind of faith, beyond, for many of us, an overly reductive dogma, many of us, we weren't allowed to ask big questions when we were younger. It's modeling and teaching our children, our young children, this kind of faith. Well, that's had a lot of us trying to understand, scratching our heads and trying to figure that out for a while. Sarah's going to be helpful with this. So if these kinds of things strike a chord for you as a parent whose own faith has evolved, we hope you'll join us virtually on Tuesday, November 12th at 7:30 for our next parenting lab. We also wanted to take a second and say thank you to the several hundred of you who showed up last Sunday to participate in the Rise Against Hunger service that we did together. Over 400 of you gathered around tables and worked hard. And when it was all said and done, there were over 60,000 meals prepared and boxed up. So to give you a sense of impact of the impact that'll have, those meals, that many meals, will feed 278 food insecure children for an entire year. I hope you'll take a second to just take that in, and to imagine that, and consider the difference that will make for that many kids. It really is incredible. Now, one question you might have had in your head is, well, who pays for that? Who paid for all the supplies, all the food, the bags, the shipping materials, the personnel that's transporting all of that, getting it where it needs to go? The answer is you. You did. You paid for that. When you contribute and fund Crosspointe, you not only keep the day-to-day going, but you're also helping that we together can have confidence to come alongside others in some really tangible ways, in different tangible ways throughout the year. So thank you for those of you who are able to be there in person to do the work. And then thank you to all of you who continue to financially sustain what we get to do and be together in our corner of the world. If you want to stay up to date on upcoming opportunities to participate in the things that we do, different things throughout the year, make sure that you subscribe to the weekly e-news. Short little e-news ends up in your inbox, tells you what you need to know. And then if you'd like to financially sustain, continue financially sustaining, or just start financially sustaining what we are all up to together, go to crosspoint.org/contribute and decide there what you want to do. It's a real honor to be counted among you wonderful people, and so thank you for all that you do. Hope you have a great day.
There has been a lot of talk about politics lately, and for good reason. But the talk on the news and social media and around dinner tables and the water cooler has been divisive and destructive rather than helpful and constructive. It has been stressful and upsetting on multiple levels. And I'm especially struck by how divided Christians are on politics and how vicious the rhetoric can get between people who share the same faith. I have been hurt by the rhetoric. Not long ago, my cousin posted something on Facebook that bragged about the Christian values that her political candidate displayed. I don't normally comment on posts like that, but I did this time. I talked about the qualities of Jesus that I have come to understand in my studies of the Gospels, and I noted that I had not seen those displayed in her candidate. I wasn't ugly or sarcastic about it, but in hindsight, I shouldn't have commented because she got angry and defensive, and she called me a false prophet. And maybe I should have laughed it off, but it hurt. My cousin, who taught me to shave my legs, who wrote a cousin song with me to the tune of Mickey Mouse Club. She attacked a core part of my identity as someone who follows Jesus and teaches the Bible. And it made me wonder, maybe Christians are so divided because we just haven't talked enough about Jesus and his politics. I'm not talking about the politics of Christianity, which are all over the place and tend to reflect the concerns of those in power. I am talking about how Jesus actually interacted with the social and political forces in his context. If we try to learn from the teachings and actions of Jesus, maybe we could gain insight into what's important in our social context. Applying Jesus' politics to our lives is not an easy task because Jesus' political situation was so different than ours. He was a poor, itinerant prophet on the outskirts of the Roman Empire who had no say in the government and whose people had been oppressed by empires for the last several centuries. Pretty different than our context, where we can vote and we have freedom to speak our opinions, and most of us live stable lives with sufficient food and shelter. However, common ground can be found between the political situation of the first century and the 21st century. The most widely used definition of politics among political science scholars is one by an American political scientist named David Easton. Politics, he says, is the authoritative allocation of values for a society. In other words, the political system is what ultimately decides which values will be prioritized in a society and how those values will be implemented. That means that when we participate in the political system, we are deciding which values should be prioritized. As a follower of Jesus, I want to value those things that Jesus values, both personally and communally. So my question for us today is, what were Jesus' priorities? What values did he live out in his own society? We know that Jesus' main message was about the kingdom of God coming on earth. He initiated this kingdom with his preaching and his ministry, modeling what it looked like to live under God's reign and make God's priorities our own. The politics of Jesus, then, are the values of God's kingdom that Jesus demonstrates in his actions and words. We have 4 Gospels that detail what Jesus does in his ministry and how he enacts the values of the kingdom. But that's a lot of ground to cover. So I have made it a little more digestible for us. I've chosen a few representative stories, vignettes if you will, from the Gospel of Luke. Luke is a good choice because he is especially concerned to tell stories about Jesus interacting with the power systems in his context. The 4 scenes we are looking at provide glimpses of Jesus' values as he encounters the social and political structures of his day. Each of them illustrate Jesus' teaching about the values of the kingdom in practical, real-life situations. Vignette number 1, I call Reversing Social Power Structures. Our first scene is from Luke 7. The setting is a dinner party at a Pharisee's house. While Jesus reclines at the table, a woman whom the narrator calls a sinner crashes the dinner full of important religious men. She has not been invited to this table, nor is she welcome there. But she is on a mission. She breaks out a jar of ointment, then washes Jesus' feet with her hair. She kisses his feet and anoints him. The host of the dinner party, Simon the Pharisee, is scandalized by her shameful display and shocked that Jesus would let that kind of woman touch him. Up to this point in the story, no character but the narrator has spoken. Jesus breaks the silence of the scene when he tells the Pharisee host a short parable. A certain moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debts for both of them. Now which of them will love him more? The Pharisee answers Jesus correctly with his words, I suppose the one for whom he canceled the greater debt. But Jesus is not impressed. He reprimands the Pharisee. Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has bathed my feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. The story ends with Jesus announcing forgiveness for the woman and commending her for her faith. On the personal, spiritual level, this is a beautiful story about forgiveness and gratitude. But something else is going on at this dinner table. The story began with an emphasis on the high social and religious position of the host. His identity as a Pharisee is mentioned several times. The descriptions of the woman highlight her low social and religious position, especially as seen through the eyes of the Pharisee. But when Jesus tells the parable about the two debtors, the social distance between the host and the woman disintegrates. No longer are they the righteous man at the head of the table and the lowly woman prostrate on the floor. They are both debtors who owe money. And as Jesus tells it, the moneylender cancels the debt for both of them. They are on equal ground as forgiven debtors. Jesus, however, does not leave them on equal ground. He heaps praise on the woman and her actions, pointing out how she has become the gracious host of the dinner party, while the original host has failed in his duties. By the end of the episode, Jesus has turned the tables on our two characters. The man who held the social and religious power in the room, who sat at the head of the table as host and probably sat at many other tables of influence, no longer inhabits the position of power in the room. The woman, who had no power or influence, who was looked down upon by the men in the room, is now the host extraordinaire, the one Jesus commends for her faith. Jesus' treatment of the woman and the Pharisee reveals his values and the priorities of the kingdom. He commends the woman's unconventional actions and lifts her from a low social position where she is judged to a place where she serves as model host and faith exemplar. At the same time, Jesus humbles the respected and self-righteous host, pulling him down from his exalted position. In his first century patriarchal context, this is a jarring reversal. Jesus is demonstrating that the values of the kingdom that he came to establish on earth are upside down from the ones that human societies tend to value. The work of the kingdom, the work Jesus does, is to turn the tables on those with arrogance, power, and privilege, and to exalt those who are humble, powerless, and despised. Vignette number 2, I call Reversing Economic Values. If you heard Tears' sermon 2 weeks ago, this next scene from Luke 19 will be familiar to you. The scene starts with a man climbing a tree. The man is Zacchaeus, a wealthy tax collector who wants to see Jesus. Zacchaeus was hated by his people because he was basically a traitor who worked for the Roman government and cheated his fellow Jews out of their measly wages in order to line his own pockets. But Jesus doesn't show the kind of hatred for Zacchaeus that everyone else thought he deserved. Instead, Jesus invites himself over to Zacchaeus' house, extending to him the kind of acceptance that no one in the city would have given him. When Jesus became the guest of a sinner, when he sat down to eat with someone so hated by his society, he was identifying himself with the tax collector. It was Jesus saying, I see you. Zacchaeus is so overwhelmed by the recognition that Jesus shows him, he immediately repents of his economic exploitation. Look, Zacchaeus says, half of my possessions I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much. This is a dramatic admission of guilt for his acts of greed, because it has action to back it up. It is repentance, but with wings. And those wings will return possessions and resources back to the people they belong to. Jesus responds to Zacchaeus' declaration with these words: "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." Jesus' words are the climax of this story. Salvation has come to this house. But what does salvation refer to here? Zacchaeus doesn't say the sinner's prayer or vow to follow Jesus. What he does is reject the exploitative economic system that made him rich, and he makes reparations for his part in the system. Zacchaeus is saved from the greed-riddled structure that fueled his career. And his salvation is made evident in the stark reversal he experiences, from grasping tax collector to open-handed penitent. Jesus' presence in Zacchaeus' life turns the table on his economic values. This story illustrates something important about the economics of the kingdom. Exploitation and greed have no place in Jesus' economy. But when we prioritize other people's needs over our own profit, we are not far from the kingdom. Vignette number 3, I call a reversal of religious priorities. Our third scene is a short but powerful one, Jesus' clearing of the temple. In it, we see Jesus performing an act that in Mark is so dramatic and controversial that it ends up getting him crucified. Luke's version of the temple clearing, though, seems tamer, almost anticlimactic. Jesus doesn't flip tables or stop the temple commerce like he does in Mark. Here's what Luke says that Jesus does. Then he entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling things there. And he said, "It is written, 'My house shall be a house of prayer,' but you have made it a den of robbers." Short and to the point, huh? Now, we know that Luke had Mark's version of the gospel when he wrote his own account. He used it as a template of sorts. So why does Luke leave out the more physically dramatic details of Jesus' religious protest? It really doesn't make for an exciting scene, does it? Well, there may not be the drama of overturned tables and angry religious leaders, but if we pay close attention to the focal point of this scene, the words that Jesus utters, then we will see that there is a powerful message here. "My house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers," is a combination of 2 quotes from the Old Testament prophets, one from Isaiah and one from Jeremiah. The prophet's job was to call out hypocrisy and injustice in Israel, and that is exactly what Jesus is doing here in the temple. The first part of Jesus' accusation, "My house shall be a house of prayer," is from Isaiah 56, a passage that encourages the people to act justly toward the eunuch and the foreigner. Both of these groups, the sexual minorities, eunuchs, and those not from Israel, foreigners, were treated as outcasts in the temple structure of Jesus' day. The temple in Jerusalem had become a segregated place with barriers that kept women, Gentiles, and other outsider groups away from the central parts of the worship space. In the Isaiah passage that Jesus quotes here, God is called the one who gathers the outcasts and welcomes them into the house of God. When Jesus confronts the temple leaders with this scripture, he is condemning them for not carrying out the work of God, for not welcoming the outcasts, the eunuchs, and the foreigners. The second part of Jesus' prophetic critique is from Jeremiah 7. There, Jeremiah is giving a lambasting sermon about those who are corrupt, who hide their crimes by claiming sanctuary in the temple. They make the house of the Lord into a den of robbers, but they think they're safe because of their access to the temple. Jeremiah challenges these people to strive for justice if they want God to dwell with them. If you truly amend your ways and your doings, if you truly act justly with one another, if you do not oppress the alien, the orphan, and the widow, or shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not go after other gods to your own hurt, then I will dwell with you in this place, in the land that I gave your ancestors forever and ever. In Jesus' day, the leaders of the temple system, the Sadducees and the high priests, they worked for and with the Roman government to keep a status quo and to maintain their own power and privilege. That meant that the religious was political and the political was religious. Jesus' words were an accusation against the temple leaders who had corrupted the purpose of the temple, who had excluded people from worship, and who had allowed the injustice of the empire to infiltrate the house of the Lord. Jesus may not be flipping tables in Luke, but he is turning the tables on the temple leaders, calling for a reversal of religious and political priorities. His words are prophetic as well. He is warning the leaders that if the temple doesn't reverse its corruption, then it will not survive. 40 years later, the Romans will come into Jerusalem and destroy the temple. The religious system of the temple and its literal walls will come crashing down around them. That future reality makes the words and actions of Jesus a perfect example of what it looks like to speak truth, prophetic truth, to power. Vignette number 4, a reversal of leadership values. Our final scene is a famous one, the Last Supper. But we won't be focusing our attention on the elements that are most iconic. Instead of discussing the significance of the bread and the cup, I want to explore what the Last Supper teaches us about the values of Jesus. There are 2 important details in the story that will help us get at what Jesus is modeling for us at this communion table. The first detail involves who is at the table with Jesus. If you've ever seen Da Vinci's Last Supper painting, then you know it is the disciples, and that they are all sitting on one side of the table. But Luke, for his part, doesn't actually name who's there, except in chapter 22, verse 21, right after Jesus shares the bread and the cup with those at the meal, he says, "But see, the one who betrays me is with me, and his hand is on the table." Jesus is sharing an intimate and important meal with Judas, the man who will leave that place to hand him over to death. Jesus knows what Judas is about to do, and yet he looks him in the eye and passes him the cup. This is something we don't stop to appreciate enough. Jesus is extending a preemptive olive branch of reconciliation to Judas before he even betrays him. Jesus had taught that we were supposed to love not only our neighbors, but our enemies as well. And here, Jesus models that enemy love by serving Judas bread and wine at the Passover meal. This is a key value of the upside-down kingdom that Jesus came to start. And it is one that humans struggle to enact. To love even those who hurt you, to forgive the wrongs that seem unforgivable, to sit at a family reunion with the cousin who has called you a false prophet on Facebook. It takes a great deal of humility to show that kind of grace. And I think that's why Luke includes a short conversation about servanthood and leadership in his Last Supper narrative. After the bread had been consumed and the wine had run out, Luke tells us that a dispute arose among the disciples as to which one of them was the greatest. Jesus turns the argument into a teaching moment. The kings of Gentiles lord it over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, the greatest among you must become like the youngest, and the leader like one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. In our first three scenes, we have observed that Jesus' politics, the priorities of the kingdom, demand a reversal of the values that dominate human societies. In the story of the woman who anoints Jesus, he turns the tables on Simon the Pharisee so that the woman who is humble, despised, and powerless becomes the host that Jesus places at the head of the table. With Zacchaeus, Jesus affirms his reversal of economic values, demonstrating that greed and exploitation have no place in the kingdom. Rather, the victims of economic systems should receive reparations and restoration. When Jesus confronts the temple leaders and clears the temple, he's issuing a harsh critique against the religious and political systems that value power over people and who use the house of God to exclude and oppress. He warns them that if the tables don't turn in the temple complex, then the whole system and the walls will come crashing down. And here, as Jesus sits down to his last meal with his disciples, we hear the final reversal in Jesus' politics, what leadership looks like in the kingdom. A leader must be the one who serves. Human societies may place powerful and successful people at the heads of the tables and the heads of state, but God's values are different. Jesus is the model for leadership here. He serves the people who follow him and loves the enemy who sits at his table. He calls out the oppressive powers of his day, revealing the social and religious corruption and the exploitation that harms people. He pushes against patriarchal structures that demean women and try to keep them away from positions of authority. Jesus shows us that the politics of the kingdom are a complete reversal of those that have dominated human societies for most of history. The kingdom values that he models: equality, economic justice, speaking truth to power, love for neighbor and enemy. These are the kind of politics that I can get behind. So in closing, we want to spend a few moments reflecting in prayer as we head into a heavy political week.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspointe.org/care. And welcome home.